History 8. Socrates, the Rise of Wisdom. Socrates was born in Athens around 470 BCE, in a city that was then rising to become one of the most powerful centers of culture, politics, and philosophy in the ancient world. Though little is known of his youth, we know that he grew into a man who lived simply, often walking barefoot through the streets of Athens, speaking with anyone willing to listen. Unlike other teachers of the time, he charged no money and carried no written doctrine. Instead, he was known for his relentless questioning, a style of dialogue later called the Socratic Method, which challenged people to examine their beliefs and to seek truth within themselves. His influence would ripple across generations, shaping his students, most famously Plato, and later, through Plato, Aristotle. As Socrates grew older, his reputation became larger and more complicated. Many admired his courage to confront powerful men and expose contradictions in their thinking. But others viewed him as dangerous, disruptive, and even disrespectful toward the traditions of Athens. His sharp mind and fearless tongue unsettled those in authority, while his associations with controversial figures such as Alcibiades and the 30 tyrants who briefly ruled Athens painted him in a suspicious light. In a city still wounded from the Peloponnesian War, many Athenians began to see him not as a wise guide, but as a threat to the moral fabric of society. His constant questioning made people uncomfortable, and whispers began to spread that Socrates was corrupting the youth and dishonoring the gods. The tension finally came to a head in 399 BCE, when Socrates was brought to trial before an Athenian jury of more than 500 citizens. The charges were serious: impiety, meaning he did not respect the gods of the city, and corruption of the youth, meaning his teachings were leading young Athenians astray. The courtroom was filled with curiosity and tension as Socrates stood to defend himself. Instead of begging for mercy, he used the trial as yet another moment of philosophy, arguing that he was in fact a blessing to the city. By questioning people and examining their beliefs, he claimed, he was awakening them to a more virtuous life. But his words, bold and unapologetic, did not soften the hearts of the jurors. When the votes were counted, 280 declared him guilty, while 221 wished to acquit him. The narrow margin revealed just how divided Athens was about this peculiar man. Yet what came next shocked the assembly even more. In Athens, convicted men often proposed an alternative punishment, such as exile or a fine, but Socrates refused to flee or silence his voice. With a sharp wit, he suggested that instead of punishment, he should be rewarded with free meals at the city's expense, like an honored Olympic victor. His friends later proposed paying a fine on his behalf, but the jurors, insulted by his defiance, voted for the ultimate penalty: death. After the trial, Socrates was placed in prison, where he spent his last days surrounded by loyal friends and disciples. Far from despairing, he continued to teach, turning his final moments into lessons about life and death. In Plato's dialogue, Phaedo, Socrates is portrayed as calm and composed, discussing the immortality of the soul, and the idea that death is not an end, but a release from the body. His composure amazed those around him, for he seemed more like a teacher in the classroom than a man awaiting his execution. For him, philosophy was not mere words, it was a way of life, and a way of facing death with courage. When the day of execution arrived, Socrates was given a cup of poison hemlock to drink, as was the custom for those condemned by the court. He accepted it without fear, drinking the liquid while his friends watched in sorrow. As the poison slowly took hold, he spoke his final words: "Crito, we owe a rooster to Asclepius." To many, this was a puzzling remark, but it may have meant that he saw death as a kind of healing, a cure from the suffering of earthly existence. To the very end, his words carried layers of meaning, reminding his followers that philosophy reaches even into the silence of death. Though his life ended in 399 BCE, Socrates did not vanish into obscurity. His teachings were preserved through the writings of his students, particularly Plato, whose works such as Apology, Crito, and Phaedo gave vivid accounts of the trial, imprisonment, and death of his master. Xenophon also wrote about him, though with a different style and perspective. These records kept the spirit of Socrates alive, ensuring that future generations could hear his voice and wrestle with his questions. Some debated whether the accounts were perfectly accurate, but what mattered most was the image they created, a man who lived and died for the pursuit of truth. Over time, Socrates became more than a man. He became a symbol. To philosophers, he represented the relentless search for wisdom. To defenders of free thought, he stood as a martyr who challenged authority without fear. To ordinary people, his story revealed the power of integrity, the courage to remain true to one's beliefs, even at the cost of one's life. In the streets of Athens, he once seemed like a strange and bothersome figure, but in the annals of history, he emerged as one of its greatest teachers. His death, intended as a warning, became instead an inspiration. Today, the story of Socrates continues to resonate. His method of questioning is still taught in schools, his ideas still debated in classrooms and cafes, his courage still admired by those who value truth above comfort. From his humble beginnings in Athens to his quiet, defiant end in prison, his life tells us that philosophy is not about memorizing theories, but about how we choose to live. His last lesson remains clear. Wisdom is not found in claiming to know everything, but in admitting how little we truly know, and in never ceasing to search for the truth